Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am grateful you are here with me today. So settle in, relax for a moment, and let your imagination open up. Because today, we are going to travel somewhere fascinating. We are going to travel to a land so old, so vast, and so full of stories that even today, the world still looks at it with wonder. We are going to travel to China. Not the China of today with its tall buildings and fast trains. No, we are going to travel back, very far back, to a time when there were no cities, no kings, and no writing. A time when people lived near rivers, planted simple food, and tried, every single day, just to survive. And from that quiet beginning, something extraordinary happened. Something that took thousands of years and changed the world forever. This is the story of an empire. A story of power, of art, of war, and of wisdom. And it begins, as all great stories do, with the land itself. If you enjoy learning English through calm and beautiful stories like this one, make sure you follow Storyline English. Every story is a new journey, and every journey helps you grow. Now, let us begin. Long, long ago, more than 4,000 years before today, there was a great river in the east. People called it the Yellow River. And along the banks of this river, in the soft yellow earth, people began to build a life. They were simple people. They farmed the land. They fished in the water. They lived in small villages, close together, close to nature. They did not have a king yet. They did not have an army, but they had something very important. They had a way of living together, of sharing, of remembering. And slowly, over many generations, those small villages grew. Families became clans, clans became tribes, and tribes began to fight, and to join, and to grow into something bigger. The first rulers of China were not called emperors, they were called kings. And the first great family of kings, the first dynasty, was called the Shang. This was around 3,000 years ago. The Shang people were powerful. They built cities from wood and stone. They made beautiful objects from bronze, a strong metal. They used a kind of early writing, carved into animal bones, to ask questions to their gods. And those bones, found thousands of years later in the ground, are still one of the greatest discoveries in the story of China. They are a message from the very beginning, a whisper from people who lived and dreamed, just like us. But the Shang did not last forever. No dynasty ever does, and that is perhaps the most important lesson this story will teach us. Because China is not just the story of one ruler or one moment. It is the story of an endless journey, of rise and fall and rise again. And we are only at the beginning. For many hundreds of years, China was not one country. It was many kingdoms, many rulers, many armies. They fought each other for land, for power, for survival. Historians call this long and difficult time the Warring States period. And it was exactly what it sounds like. States at war, people suffering, villages destroyed, families torn apart. It was a dark and dangerous time. But from that darkness, one man rose. His name was Ying Zheng. He was born in the year 259 before the Common Era. He became king of a powerful western state called Qin when he was only 13 years old. 13! Just a boy. And yet, something inside him was already different. He was focused, he was patient, and he was determined to do something no one had ever done before. He wanted to end the wars, not by making peace, but by winning, by conquering every other kingdom, one by one, until there was only one ruler left, him. And after many long years of battles and planning, he did it. In the year 221 before the Common Era, Ying Zheng unified China. He brought all the fighting kingdoms together under one rule, and he gave himself a new name. He called himself Qin Shi Huang. It means the first emperor of Qin. He was the first person in history to call himself Emperor of China. And he changed everything. He created one system of writing for all of China, so that people from different places could finally understand each other. He created one system of money, one system of roads and measurements. He connected the country in ways it had never been connected before. He was brilliant. He was powerful. But he was also afraid, deeply, quietly afraid. Because Qin Shi Huang did not want to die. And that fear, as we will discover, led him to make one of the most extraordinary decisions in all of human history. Qin Shi Huang was afraid of death. He did not talk about this fear openly, but his actions told the story. He sent people across the ocean to find a medicine that could make him live forever. He refused to say the word death inside his palace, and when he began to think about his own tomb, about the place where his body would rest after he died, he did not think small. He thought big, bigger than anyone had ever thought before. He ordered the construction of a city underground, a complete world built beneath the earth, just for him. And to protect him in that underground world, he ordered the creation of an army. Not a real army of living soldiers, but an army made of clay. Thousands and thousands of soldiers, each one different, each one with its own face, its own expression, its own position. Some standing, some kneeling, some holding weapons. There were horses and chariots and officers, all made by hand, by thousands of workers over many years. This army is called the Terracotta Army, and it was hidden underground for more than 2,000 years. Nobody knew it was there, until one day in 1974, some farmers were digging a well in the dry earth of Shaanxi province, and their tools hit something hard. They looked down, and they saw a face, a clay face, looking back at them from the ground. It was one of the soldiers, and beneath that soldier, there were thousands more. The discovery of the Terracotta Army was one of the greatest archaeological findings in history. It showed the world something important. It showed how powerful Qin Shi Huang was, how much he believed in his own greatness, and how far a human being will go when they are afraid of the end. But even with all his power, the first emperor died. In 210 before the Common Era, while traveling, he became sick and passed away. His dynasty, the Qin, did not survive long after him, only a few years. Because great power, built on fear and force, is often very fragile, and China would soon need a different kind of leader. After the Qing Dynasty fell, China went through a short period of conflict and uncertainty. Generals fought each other. The land was unstable. But then, a new dynasty rose, a dynasty that would last for more than 400 years. A dynasty so important, so powerful, and so loved by the Chinese people that even today, the largest group of Chinese people call themselves the Han people. This was the Han Dynasty. And it began with a man who was not born into power. His name was Liu Bang. He was a simple man, a low official from a village, not a prince, not a general's son, but he was clever and he understood people. He built friendships and alliances, and after years of struggle, he defeated his rivals and became the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. He ruled with a softer hand than Huang. He reduced taxes, he listened to advisors, he let the land rest and recover. And under the Han Dynasty, something beautiful began to happen. China grew strong again, not just militarily, but culturally. Scholars were respected, art and music developed, and trade began to flow. A great road system connected China to the West. Merchants traveled with silk, spices, and porcelain, and people from distant lands traveled east to discover this extraordinary civilization. This network of trade roads became known as the Silk Road, and it was more than just a road for goods. It was a road for ideas, for religions, for languages. China and the world were becoming connected. It was a golden age, peaceful, creative, and full of discovery. But even golden ages end, and China, as always, would face new storms. Because history never stops moving, and the journey was far from over. After the Han Dynasty, China entered a long and complicated period. Many dynasties came and went. Some lasted only a few years. Some lasted for centuries. There were times of war and division, times when the country split into smaller kingdoms again, just like the old days. And then there were times when a new ruler unified everything again and brought peace. This cycle, this endless pattern of rise and fall, is one of the most fascinating things about Chinese history. It is almost like breathing, in and out, unity and division, peace and war. One of the most important dynasties after the Han was the Tang Dynasty. It ruled from about 600 to 900 of the Common Era, and it is often called one of the greatest periods in Chinese history. The Tang capital, a city called Chang'an, was the largest city in the world at that time. It had more than 1 million people. People from all over Asia came to live and work there. Poets wrote beautiful verses. Painters created incredible art. Scholars studied the stars and the earth. And for a time, it felt like China was at the center of the world. Because in many ways, it was. But after the Tang came more conflict, more change. And then came a power that shook not just China, but the entire known world. A power that came from the north, from the open grasslands, on fast horses, with great skill and terrible force. The Mongols were coming, and when they arrived, nothing would be the same. In the early 1200s, a man named Genghis Khan united the nomadic tribes of Mongolia. He built the largest land empire the world had ever seen. His armies were fast, organized, and almost impossible to stop. They swept across Asia and into Europe, and they had their eyes on China. For years, the Mongols fought against Chinese forces. They broke through walls and crossed rivers. They were patient and relentless. And by 1279, after decades of war, the Mongols finally conquered all of China. It was a complete and total conquest. A foreign power ruled China for the first time. The dynasty they created was called the Yuan Dynasty, and its most famous ruler was Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan was different from many Mongol leaders. He was curious about Chinese culture. He respected Chinese traditions. He surrounded himself with scholars and artists. He even invited a young traveler from Italy to his court, a man named Marco Polo. Marco Polo spent many years in China. He traveled through its cities and roads. He saw its wealth and its systems of organization. And when he returned to Europe and told his stories, people did not believe him. They thought he was making it all up, because the China he described sounded too magnificent, too advanced, too extraordinary to be real. But it was real. China was real. And even under Mongol rule, it continued to grow, to create, and to surprise the world. But the Yuan dynasty did not last. By the mid-1300s, disease, famine, and rebellion tore it apart. And from those ashes, a new and remarkable Chinese dynasty was born. After the fall of the Yuan dynasty, a new Chinese dynasty rose to power. It was called the Ming Dynasty, and it began, like several great dynasties before it, with a man from humble origins. His name was Zhu Yuanzhang. He was born into a very poor family. As a child, he begged for food. He spent time as a wandering monk. He had nothing. And yet, in the chaos of the late Yuan period, he joined a rebellion, showed extraordinary skill and courage, and slowly, step by step, rose to become the founder of the Ming Dynasty in 1368. He called himself the Hongwu Emperor, and he ruled with strength and deep suspicion. He trusted very few people. But he rebuilt China, and the Ming Dynasty became one of the most powerful and sophisticated civilizations in the world. It was during the Ming period that China made one of its greatest architectural achievements. The emperors ordered the rebuilding and extension of a great wall along the northern border, a wall to protect China from invasions. Workers, soldiers, and prisoners spent generations building it, piece by piece, across mountains and deserts. This wall became what we know today as the Great Wall of China. It stretched for thousands of kilometers. Some parts were wide enough for 5 horses to walk side by side on top. It was not just a wall, it was a statement, a declaration that China was strong, that China was protected, and that China intended to last. And the Ming also sent great ships across the seas, led by an explorer named Zheng He, to show the world the power and beauty of Chinese civilization. But even the Ming, with all their walls and ships and power, eventually fell. The Qing Dynasty replaced them in 1644, and with the Qing, a new chapter began. The Qing Dynasty was the last imperial dynasty of China. It was founded by the Manchu people from the northeast, and it lasted until 1912. For many years, the Qing ruled a vast and powerful empire. But over time, the world around China began to change very fast. European countries became very powerful. They had new technologies, new weapons, and a strong desire for trade and territory. China, which had for so long seen itself as the center of the world, began to face pressure from outside like never before. There were wars. There were unequal treaties that forced China to give land and trading rights to foreign powers. There was the Opium War with Britain. There were internal rebellions that killed millions of people. The Taiping Rebellion alone, in the mid-1800s, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. China was suffering. The Qing Dynasty grew weak. Corruption spread. People lost trust in the old system. And in 1912, after centuries of imperial rule, the last emperor of China, a young boy named Puyi, gave up the throne. The dynasty was over. The empire was over. And China began its long, painful, and fascinating journey into the modern world. It was a journey full of revolution, war, and reinvention. A journey that would take almost another century to find its footing. And yet, through all of it, the spirit of China, that ancient, enduring, extraordinary spirit, never disappeared. It bent, it changed, but it never broke. And so, my friends, we come to the end of our journey through the history of China. We traveled from the banks of the Yellow River, where simple farmers planted seeds thousands of years ago. We walked through the courts of emperors and the camps of warriors. We stood beneath the shadow of the Great Wall and looked out at the horizon. We listened to the stories of men and women who built something extraordinary, often with very little, in very difficult times. And what do we take from all of this? What does this story teach us? Perhaps it teaches us that nothing lasts forever. Not empires, not power, not even great walls. But something else does last. Ideas last. Culture lasts.